Brought to you by Infineon. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joar, and today is Thursday, September 11th, 2025. And I've got the excellent Adrian Mikolajczak here from Infineon. Hi, Adrian. Welcome back on the show. It's good to see you.
Hi, Miriam. It's great to see you, and you're very kind.
Well, listen, October Tech is coming up, which is Infineon's big yearly tech conference. And I'm really excited about this because every time I go, I'm like, wow, this is cool. You guys are always doing some cool stuff, right? Obviously, Infineon's well known for making semiconductor products that are used by so many companies in consumer products, in industrial application, in all kinds of data centers everywhere. Let's touch on some of the things you're going to be showing at October Tech. And let's start with Edge AI, which I think is, something that's growing and becoming more and more critical, especially when you're trying to run more and more sophisticated models more efficiently without network connectivity, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Actually, maybe even before I jump there, I highlight that, from a technology point of view this year, it's very exciting. And, our October Tech theme used to be, make the impossible possible. But this year we changed that to get ready for the future today. And so when you ask about Edge AI, there's a lot kind of under the covers, if I may, that is becoming very real, very, very fast. And so, and I say under the covers too, because Edge AI is one of these. Edge AI is amazing in what it's promised to do, but a lot of the audience may or may not even know or be aware when they are being supported by Edge AI. And by that, what I mean is some of the cool stuff you can do is like one of our products one of our demos that we're showing off at October Tech is on our PSOC Edge. It's a small microcontroller, and it's going to do vision recognition, Face ID.
Okay.
And a lot of the audience will say, Face ID, my laptop does Face ID, my phone does Face ID. What the hell's the big deal about this? And and the answer is, the cool part is we're doing it on a microcontroller. So we're saving, in that case, I had the engineers look it up and they kind of did a study on it. They said, look, if I use the microprocessor on the laptop or I switch to a PSOC Edge, that's a 200x power saving for the same job. Right. And so what this means is now you can start doing things that used to need a server, used to need a serious laptop or a serious computer, and you can do it on a small battery-powered device. So all of a sudden, your smart speaker at home, something that's battery-powered, can recognize you.
Right. So is this using a regular camera system or a dot projector infrared setup? Because that's the thing. A way to make it more easy to do that on a phone was by using a dot projector, which is essentially specialized hardware, right? The critical thing where we're going now is using regular cameras. You don't have to use anything special, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the study we did here was just using straight up the normal camera.
That's what I figured.
No optical acceleration or optical enhanced devices. So just processor to processor.
And this you're making a very good point. Like your iPhone doesn't do that. Like your iPhone uses a dot projector, right? And I mean, granted, it's been doing it for years, right? So, but here's what's also interesting, kind of tying it in with some of the current technology. The Pixel phone that was launched a couple of weeks ago is one of the few phones that uses a regular camera to do that. And it's the second generation now, or third, I think. Since the 8, I think they've been doing that, which is interesting because they don't have a dot projector. They're just using your camera. And it's the only Android phone that lets you use your face for payment. Of all the ones ever made, that don't have a dot projector. so tying that back into what Infineon's doing, I think the thing I find is really fascinating is microcontrollers being able to do this. Like, how did you ever get to that point where you were like, aha, we should make a microcontroller that's powerful enough for this, but still has all the awesomeness of a microcontroller, right? The low cost, the power efficiency, and all that other stuff.
I mean, what's fascinating about it is I think some of it is also we're learning how to do better jobs with AI. The industry is, right?
Right.
So like, today when you use like a ChatGPT or an LLM, you're going out to a server. and it's crunching away at whatever query you put into it. And it'll give you a great answer. And the interesting thing is, we realized as we were doing this is that system uses everything ever generated on the internet as its training model. And we said, geez, we could simplify the training area and make it more
Yeah, you can
specific.
narrow it down. Yeah, exactly.
If you narrow it down, now you can squeeze some of that LLM capability into a microcontroller. And
Right.
that's kind of where a lot of the research and effort's going. So a case example of that too. We ran a study with this one where we queried an LLM server, and we did the math, and we looked at it and we said, geez, that pulls about zero point 0.3 watt hours to answer a question like, how should I start my 10-minute workout? Right. So you
Right.
ask your
Yeah.
smartwatch, how should I start my 10? And if it has to query a server, that's 0.3 watt hours. And if you build in a trainer knowledge base, you can
Hmm.
fit an LLM into a microcontroller, and you can put that in your watch, and it'll burn. In this case, they measure it out 0.007 watt hours.
Wow, that's a
So
big improvement.
98% power saving. So again, it makes that same function that you were using a server for now possible on your smartwatch, which is super cool.
So, one of the products I think that it's in development that you're partnering with a company is Camino Mobility, and they're making walkers for older people
Sure.
or people who have mobility issues in general. Like, if you have a stroke or something and you need a walker. And they're using some of your Edge AI technology, some of Infineon's technology to test this and develop this for gait perception, I believe, for image-based gait perception. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Going to this power topic, this is exactly the topic. This is a battery powered device that people will want to use for a full day, and this is a walker to help elderly people move. So it's really robotics in a sense. It's a walker that not only
Yeah,
does
it's like
gait detection.
enhancing your walking, right?
Yeah, it's
Basically.
got motor control. You start walking forward, it pulls you up the hill, it brakes for you on the downhill. It does all these amazing things for safety and all these other stuff. But one of the topics is, as we walk, one of the key description points there is, if you widen your gait a little bit, that probably means you may not even know you're doing it, but your brain is telling your legs, hey, I don't feel so steady today, widen. And so these are key things that are important for our safety, and also as we age, or at any age, frankly, to alert us that maybe we're not 100% today. Maybe
Maybe you
there's
might fall
something.
today or in the
I
next
might
few
fall,
days. Yeah, something's up,
or
right?
there's something wrong, right? Like, hey,
Uh-huh.
maybe I've got some health issue because it's been a week and I've been walking wide. What's going on? So they've been using Edge AI, and specifically recognizing the key, call it vectors of your feet, to understand what your gait is, whether you're stepping wider, whether you're stepping a little off, whether you're, and now they're able to feed that back either to you as a user or to your doctor, and when they get connected back to the internet. Um, and so it's a pretty powerful combo. But again, for them, the big issue is they need to be local. They need to be operating when there's no
Right.
Wi-Fi available. You're on a cruise ship somewhere, whatever you're doing, they need to be
Yep.
working, and they need power savings. They can't afford to
Yeah.
burn,
I mean, they already have motors in there. Like those are going to draw a lot of current, right? You're trying to slow people down while they're walking. But you make a good point. And I think just to tie it in as a kind of consumer product, this talks to a smartphone over Bluetooth. The smartphone is used as kind of like a control panel and a display for the device, for the
Sure.
walker. And so that's how the data would get sent to your doctor saying, hey, something's up perhaps with the gait right now. So it doesn't happen in real time because the device doesn't have any connectivity to the walker, but it just accumulates that data, does the analysis locally, goes, something's up. Let's tell this to the phone app. The phone app, when it gets back to the internet, or if it's real time, if it's connected, it'll do it. But it doesn't rely on having a phone. If the person doesn't have a phone, it's okay. Their caretaker might be able to do that for them, right?
Correct.
Pretty cool.
It is, and
Yeah.
I think it's one of these growing areas where we're seeing this now in a lot of devices and a lot of our customer base, where they're adding some of these features to things that haven't changed in years, and so we don't even think about it. We're like, oh, what could be changing in a walker, and so much. And that's true for a lot of these devices that people are working on.
I mean, I think to me, the walker is kind of like the stepping stone towards the next, cyber thing that we all had imagined in our sci-fi future, which is like the exoskeleton, right? Like wearing a thing that makes you walk better or faster or lift things. And, maybe that ties back into another topic we wanted to talk about, which is robotics. Because, sure. I want to talk about that a little bit. What, in terms of robotics, does October Tech bring to the table? Every time I go every year, it's like I'm like a kid in a candy store. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. It's like I go and I feel like I'm like at the science fair as a high school student, going, "Oh my god, this is the coolest thing ever!" Because you guys are doing the craziest stuff. So robots, obviously, come on, everybody loves robots, right? Except for the scary ones we're starting to see; those are a little weird. But anyway,
even those, they make blockbuster movies, so
exactly. So what's happening on the robotics side?
Yeah, that is an exciting topic for Infineon. It's almost like we were built for robotics, and it may sound a little campy, but you look at what we do. We're number one in automotive, and we work on things like functional safety and these kinds of things. And robots, they're all about being like an autonomous vehicle. They are an autonomous vehicle.
Indeed.
So on the robotics side, we're showing off some of the latest things we're doing on functional safety specifically. And then, of course, in automotive, we worry about motor drives and we worry about motor control and all those kinds of things. That goes right into robotics. And then the other cool piece is like on the sensor side and even the edge AI side and these other topics. That's another area we focus. So, all of a sudden we get to use that and a lot of our stuff that we're doing for consumer and pull it also into this space and use it for robotics. So, some of the things we're talking about, like on a consumer side, like you wouldn't necessarily think of an automobile so much, but the machine itself, how strong is it grabbing something? Is it touching something? Is something close? And like we're showing off some of our CapSense technology, which comes out of user interfaces now and applying that to a robot, so it can say my hand is getting close. It's actually now touching. It's now touching hard. All those kinds of things. So I mean, the technology for us, it's like we take the best of the stuff we're doing for consumer, the best of the stuff we're doing for automotive, and even some stuff in industrial for the high power stuff, and we put it all together, and that becomes the robotic story.
But that's the magic, right? And in some applications, you also need like a motor controller, right? For example, something you guys do, you make all these incredible, super powerful silicon systems, inverters, whatever, to control motors, motor drives. But a motor drive might benefit from edge AI nowadays, right? Like it all ties in together, right? You might have an algorithm that's not just a logical, if this, then that algorithm, which is like normal, computer, old school computer stuff. But you might have when I detect this kind of torque on the motor, I might want to, kind of like this, I'm learning, maybe, you can optimize the duration, the lifespan of the motor, making it last longer by, analyzing over time what it's doing, using an LLM, like a Pardon LLM on that microcontroller, and then telling, the motor controller, reprogram yourself so you don't put as much strain on the motor in this particular setup. But we do need you to give max power for this setup, right? Kind of thing.
Right.
And now the motor might get, 25, 30, 50% lifetime, lifespan improvement, which in industrial application, it means big money, like robots on the assembly line. But for us, for like everyday things, like again, if we get that walker, right? It means a product that lasts longer. And when you're probably going to spend a lot of money on these medically related devices, it's probably a good idea, right? So I think it all ties in,
It does. It does. In fact, that's exactly what I was saying with the industrial. This is where, the high reliability, hey, will it last 15, 20 years kind of topic comes in. And that's the third leg that I kind of mentioned quickly. And we're seeing a lot of interest in a lot of the even things that, may not sound high tech, but actually are, like in packaging and how do you design the right thermal package to make sure you get the right cooling to maximize the life of this thing, and respond to the temperature of it, as you were mentioning. These are all things we worry about a lot in our industrial business, and here it is in robotics. And I'll throw one other at you I didn't think about, but last year at October Tech, I'm in our demo room right now, and I'm looking at, we have a drone where we talked about our GaN devices last year, and we said, hey, we can cut the motor size by roughly a half to reduce weight and so forth. And that goes like again right into robotics. You don't want, if you're wearing some sort of assisted motion device, you don't want a big clunky motor on there. So the latest in technology, you switch it to GaN, it cuts in half, and everyone
Yeah.
goes, "Wow, that's some really sleek robot arms you got." I go, yeah.
But I mean, I think I think everyone can relate to GaN. Like we all of us nowadays, most of us who travel a lot and stuff and use some sort of high speed charging smartphone or laptop. Most of them now are charged faster. That's thanks to GaN, right? Because the chargers are tiny, lightweight, affordable,
Right.
yet super powerful, and ties it back into this to the consumer products. And but there is one thing that I think also Infineon's kind of leading, but it's not. It's kind of, for a lot of consumers, it's still kind of pie in the sky. But I think it's the foundational research that's happening right now is going to be incredibly helpful and useful in the future, and that's quantum computing. So you guys leading in that area, can you kind of talk us through this a little bit and tell us like what Infineon is up to in that field?
Yeah. So, I mean, quantum computing, as you mentioned, it's kind of, I think most people's impression is exactly the way you phrased it. It's pie in the sky, it's future, I don't know. It's always 10 years out. Every time I ask, oh, yeah, 10 years from now, it's going to be amazing. Two comments on this. Number one is there's a lot of hype in that space, and what it actually is and capable of is actually quite amazing, but it's not everything. It's not going to do everything. It is going to do some things incredibly well, especially modeling of materials, modeling of chemical analyses, chemical reactions, modeling of sorting through unstructured databases, finding answers. I mean, these are the kinds of things it does. Now, having said that, and we can talk about how some of those are amazing, but before we even get there, the key thing I want to hit is the pie in the sky topic. I think it used to be it's always 10 years out. And we actually just did a video on it. And one of the amazing things as we were talking to people in the industry is there is a market shift. It is no longer it's 10 years out. What's now really happened is it's gotten far enough along. To me, mentally, 10 years out is long-term R&D, research stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's really changed to engineering. People are talking about 2 years from now, I will have, a 100 qubit machine. 3 years from now, these are now R&D cycles, no longer pie in the sky, future. Whether it's 2 years, 3 years, maybe it's 4. My point is, it's not 10 years out. Good luck. It's really, how do we solve these last final problems? And then for Infineon, what's cool about what we're doing there is we are helping companies because, all these innovations we do, be it microphones, which is a MEMS-based technology, or
Yep.
power devices, which is very complicated, deep trench technology, it's all process technology. The way we get to be number one in a lot of these spaces is because of our process know-how. And what's interesting about quantum is people have, when it was research, made prototypes, but now they're talking about how do we make engineering reliable, repeatable
Yeah, how you mass produce
solutions.
that stuff, right? To solve
Right.
real problems in the real world. And
How do we make wafers
this
that have on them, actual quantum qubit controllers, if I may,
that
and
is cool. You
and
have
make
one. I
them.
saw that in the video you showed me, and I was like, "Ooh, one to touch, one to touch the tech."
I'll break the quantum computer, but
I'm
anyway,
like,
don't
"Oh
touch it.
yeah, I got quantum in my hands," Yeah.
But it's
Well,
becoming
listen,
real, and I think it's exciting.
this is great. This is, I think, we're not going to see the results of this just yet, but I think that, in the same sense that you are a semiconductor powerhouse at Infineon, right? You have defined a whole bunch of things that are under the hood of what we use every day. Quantum computing is going to be part of that, and you need to be part of it. And I think it's really exciting to see that what you're telling us. It's no longer pie in the sky 10 years from now research. It's now like shorter term R&D. We're doing trying to do mass production, trying to streamline these processes. So it's not just an experiment anymore. Now we can repeat it and get some real results from that. And that's really cool. Tell us quickly about what's behind you and stuff, because I know that you're going to be making a new video showing some of the stuff from October Tech. And it ties in with this room you're in right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I'm in this. I'm in what we call a tech zone, and this is kind of a year-round. It's in our lobby, and we show off, some of the latest technology. So typically, like after October Tech, when we show off our latest stuff, then we'll move it into the tech zone, and then people can come visit, customers can come visit and see what we're doing. And we're actually this year we have a pilot one right now, and I'll definitely send you the link to it. But it's we're calling it Tech Zone Goes Digital, and the pilot one right now shows what's in the tech zone right now, and people can go and it's any time of day, any time of year, they can go and look at some new technology. And then after October Tech, we'll then upgrade it with the newest demos that we've been showing there, and so people will get a chance to get involved and see some of the stuff that's going on. Some of it's
Well,
going
that
to production, some of it's experimental, but that's exactly why we're showing it, because we want to engage people and we want them to see what's possible.
Well, that's actually really exciting because I'm going to link to it in the show notes, the one you already have. And I think you and I are going to be talking around October Tech again. And then we'll
Okay.
put the updated link in the show notes. So, folks, stay tuned. If you're really interested in what Infineon is up to and you want to see some of the stuff, we're going to be able to give you that on video. And those of you who can attend because you're part of industry, Infineon's October Tech is when?
October 16th.
That's it. So, folks, stay tuned for more from Infineon on all this cool technology. And Adrian, thanks so much for being on the show yet again. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And, folks, we're back with Carolina Milanesi. Hi, Carolina. How are you today?
I am all right. I'm just surviving a red eye. So,
Goodness. Oh, you came back from Apple.
I made a pit stop in Seattle and then came back on the East Coast. Yeah.
Funny, I want to talk to you about Apple. I'm not going to lie, that was the intent. Look, you're wonderful and you always have some really incredible insights. So as an analyst, I want to pick your brain about this Apple. I am very impressed with this Apple event. No BS. Oh, very little. I mean, the usual Apple, level of, but I'm talking like night and day compared to the Pixel event, which I still think was a disaster. Like, I understand that they were trying to go away from the main, the main tech audience, but it felt so forced. It was not as bad as Samsung's done, but it felt so forced. This felt natural, felt Apple, very little AI, which was really nice. And then the products are so great. I think this might be the best base iPhone we've had in maybe forever.
It's interesting that you bring up the Pixel event because I was actually a fan, and I know that I'm in the minority, but I do think that Google needed to do something a little bit more mainstream. And I think what they did well, and we can argue whether or not the kind of a live TV, kind of setting was the right one. But what I do think that they did very well was all the different age brackets and use cases that they hit on, right? Because with AI, to your point about Apple not talking about AI too much at their event, there's still a lot of education that needs to happen, and being able to give to consumer a real use cases that speaks to them, and what appeals to me is going to be different than what appeals to you or somebody else, right? And of course, for Apple, bringing it to this week, I think it is being thoughtful the way they talk about AI because they have to, right? They did overpromise, and they have admitted that they need more time to deliver a more personal Siri, which is fine. Consumers are still not kind of running to a store asking for AI first, right? They're still asking for battery life.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. Exactly right. And I agree with you. I think they did deliver a very strong portfolio that has, as always, a little bit for everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that the in retrospect, looking back at it, the Pixel event wasn't as bad as I initially felt. But it's more, to me, it wasn't so much. I think you make some good points. I really do think that they nailed explaining AI to a whole group of people. I'm just not sure, like you're right about the TV show thing. That was a bit cringe. Fallon is okay. Like, he's a nerd, which I think is cool, but it just felt artificial. Like, it didn't feel, Apple makes it so seamless and just so confident and so like,
Well,
I
there
felt
is something about recording, right? I
well,
mean,
yeah, but even when they did it live,
movie.
they did it live, and it used to be like that, which I kind of regret they don't do anymore. Honestly, I know it's probably way less. Maybe it's not less work, but it's way easier to control, right? And it's still
Control,
Apple's MO, right? But I think that I don't want Google to do, go back to what they were doing. Absolutely not. I'm just disappointed that at the end of the Pixel thing, I didn't feel like I wanted to get a Pixel.
Oh, interesting.
Even though I'm a Pixel user, and even though I felt that they did a good job explaining the features, because it was so googly, right? Like they were so focused on the cloud, the software, the AI, not so like it's still a device. It still needs to be very personal. It still needs to be something physical in your hand.
I see what you're saying.
Apple really went there. They talked about the specs, even though some people are going to tune out and go, I don't know what that means. But they do it such that it's not overbearing, I don't know. It's just.
So I think you just explained the difference business model of these two companies, right? Because although it's made by Google and it's Pixel, in reality, it is Google and it is about Gemini and it is about, so they were really selling Gemini and the services on top of it, not necessarily the Pixel, which is why maybe you walked away wanting the features, but not the device, if that makes sense. But with Apple, it's all about the hardware. And that's what they were selling.
And that's
right?
what I mean. Like, that's what I like better. Like, even though I'm not an iPhone user, I have an iPhone, of course, they send me them and stuff. But like, I'm not a main iPhone user. I feel like I like Apple's storyline better. It feels less, feels less dystopian, more real to me somehow. And it's sad because I feel like the Pixel 10 series this year is the best hardware they've ever made, with the best chips, with the best everything.
Agree with you.
And it's like you completely missed the opportunity to finally say, hey, we are an AI company, we do this cool stuff. Here is all the use cases. But by the way, this hardware is outstanding, and we've kicked butt.
But they need to balance the fact that they're still depending a lot on Samsung, right? And they want Motorola. And so is that like very fine line that, they thread between saying we make great hardware. Oh, by the way, if you don't want ours, there's Samsung, there's Motorola, there's Xiaomi, there's all these, these other people that, so it is harder. And I think that, one of the things that I wrote in my article as far as Apple was that I feel this event once again brought home the importance of vertical integration.
Oh my God,
and
so much, that, especially with the Air. Yeah,
exactly right. And I think with that, there's that control, right? That Pixel also has, but Apple controls everything, including the ecosystem. And that's not, for Android is different because you have different players. So I think that to exactly to your point, which was what I was talking about, the Air is such a great example of what you can deliver once you control silicon, modem, design, software, AI, and the engineering that went into that device is something else.
I agree, but my counterpoint to you is this, and this is a valid counterpoint. The S25 Edge kind of, in a way, stole the show by coming out first and really impressing all of us. I went into it thinking, okay, I wasn't anti it. A lot of people were, but I loved it once I used it, and I could get over the battery life because I know how to manage that. Also, I'm a longtime Pixel user. My battery life sucks to start with, so I'm used to it, right? But that being said, I feel that like you look at them side by side, and in many ways to me, the iPhone Air is a miss. Like, it's only 0.2 millimeter thinner. It doesn't have a bigger battery. We don't know exactly, right? But it lacks a camera. It lacks a SIM tray. It lacks millimeter wave. How is it that Samsung was able to do all of that in a phone that's barely thicker? And if you touch them side by side, other than the edges that are rounder on the iPhone and make it feel thinner, there is actually no major difference in size. So my question is, I think Apple's patting themselves on the back a little too much with the Air compared to the competition. I think we need to hold them accountable to that. Like, no millimeter wave, I understand, right? Like I personally
they
don't
don't.
care. But I'm very still completely upset about the lack of SIM on the
I know you
on the
would
Pixel.
be.
And I think that it's a slippery slope to go to eSIM globally. And we've actually heard a news item today that they've delayed the pre-orders in China because the Chinese carriers are not ready for eSIM.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that China was going to be an issue, but if you look at Europe, people are so used to use eSIM
I
because
know.
of travel.
And I'm not against it. I just think like let's keep the tray as long as we can. If you need to save some space, I understand it. But on these kind of phones, it might make sense. But again, Samsung made a phone that's barely thicker, that has a SIM tray, has millimeter wave, has an ultra wide camera. Why, if Apple is so mighty, why couldn't they do that and add a telephoto? That would have been a trick, right?
I don't know, because I with Apple is always not necessarily what you can do, but they make design choices as far as the portfolio is concerned and where the product fits.
It is $100 cheaper than the Edge. We have to give them credit for that. We actually have to give everybody credit. Samsung, Google and Apple for not raising prices on anything.
Yeah.
Kudos to that.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think there is a question of choice, not necessarily that couldn't be done when it comes to the Air. And battery life has been such a topic of conversation.
Let's talk about that, actually. Yeah.
I made the mistake to post a picture of the Air with the battery pack that Apple redesigned for the Air. Over 1 million views on X.
Nice.
And the kind of yes, but like I swear, the kind of comments, oh, what's the point? You might as well buy the Pro. Indeed. And there is one. Like, you don't have to buy this phone, nor you have to wear the battery pack all the time, right? It's if you want the 40 hours of streaming, which is what the Pro gives you, then you attach the battery pack and you'll have that. Now, I'm eager to see, once I get it, how hot it gets and what, a day actually means.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Depending on the user. But, the battery pack is, in my article, I called it, like a safety net, like a Linux blanket. You don't have to have it all the time, right? It's there if you need it.
It's modular, which is nice.
Correct. And the design is actually really nice because they made it longer and much thinner compared to the current battery pack. It doesn't work on other models, unfortunately, because I think it depends on where they put the magnets for it. But, it looks much sleeker. And it's a choice. And at the end of the day, you have a portfolio of products, depending on what kind of user you are, whether you are, maybe you're not a power user and the day battery that you get is enough for you.
And to be fair, since I was making a comparison with the Edge does not have Qi 2 magnets, and it does not have the ability to do that. So that's not even an option for you. You need to have a cable, and it's a pain in the butt. So, but I also want to point out to you that I feel that there's a missed opportunity for Apple, and it's also a missed opportunity for Google, and it's a missed opportunity for Samsung, and it's a missed opportunity for North American customers of not having silicon carbon in these phones. And I still do not understand this. We're 3 years into it, right? And, Honor was a pioneer in this, but everyone from the BBK group, former BBK group companies, the OnePluses and the Oppos and the Realmes and the Vivos, all the Xiaomi group, I literally have a half dozen phones here that are $250 to $350 mid-range phones sold not just in China, sold worldwide by Chinese manufacturers with 7,000 milliamp hour silicon carbon batteries that are thinner than the iPhone 17 Pro. Now, they're not flagships, right? But it's kind of like, why is it Apple? This was like, I know Samsung's traumatized by the Note 7, so I did not expect. I was
gonna say,
but Apple, I expected Apple to be like, okay, this is in the same way as we put the C1 modem in the 16E, and I gushed about how good it was, and I'm sure the C1X will be amazing, and I know that Apple's chips is where they nail it, the A19. Like we should talk about that because I think Apple, that vertical integration is, to me, it's mostly about the silicon at this point. Yeah. The manufacturing of that, they've shown that they can make unibody everything, right? Like that they're the masters at that, and that's why I use a MacBook Air, right? Like it's freaking amazing. But The silicon is where it's at. And I think that, with these chips, they're doing such a good job. So really the next thing is you test the waters on the air with a silicon carbon battery, give users not necessarily better battery lives than the pros. I don't think you should go there. I think you keep your tiers going, but maybe give it 1.5 times the battery life. So it gets like to 80% of the pros performance and say, hey, this is a new technology we're putting in there. And we're taking a chance, I don't know. I feel like that was a missed opportunity because Samsung didn't do it. They weren't going to do it. And who knows if they will. Google already flat out told me at Google I/O they would not do silicon carbon, that it's a dead-end bad technology. That's literally what they told me. And I'm like, are you nuts? I think it's absolutely the future. I'm telling you, Carolina, I think as an analyst, you tell me if I'm wrong, but by 2028, every phone out there will be 7,000 milliamp hour battery. We're going to see flagships coming out in the fall from China with batteries like that. We're going to get 10,000 milliamp hour on mid-range and budget phones by 2 years from now, guaranteed.
I don't know how much of it is supply chain, how much of it is Apple not taking a chance on the product that is supposed to be probably the biggest iPhone redesign and new entry, right?
Yes.
In the space since we had the bigger iPhone. I think it might have been too risky. And I wonder if the supply chain is right and if all the testing is turns out to be right and the risk is small, if maybe that's going to come with a foldable. Because I do believe that the same as the Edge has been a stepping stone to
the Z Fold 7, yeah.
Exactly right. I think that the Air is a stepping stone to a foldable iPhone, which kind of gets me a little bit upset because I've been always arguing that Apple was going to do a foldable iPad before they did the foldable iPhone.
I'm annoyed because I want them to do a flip phone. I want them to do the normal iPhone that folds in half because I think there's no software to change other than the front screen. Like you could just have a normal iPhone experience when it's open.
Yeah, and it's much less of a learning curve for the consumer as well because once you open it, it's just a traditional phone.
I'm surprised they're not going to do that. They're going to go with a book style. I mean, I'm the customer for that product, right? You might be. But I think that the average person out there, when I show them a folding phone, they are all over the flip. They're not all over the fold.
Yeah, mass market foldable is a flip form factor. There's no question.
But do you think that's because, again, supply chain? Because that's a big part of Apple's strategy, right? Like they're making phones in numbers that are so much bigger than the competition. Like when you look at Honor, right? Their numbers compared to Apple, right? Of course they can put silicon carbon in everything, right? And then same with these 7,000 milliamp hour mid-range budget phones. There are so many different models in so many different markets. They don't have to spin up quite the quantities of these particular cells. So I think that maybe the reason they're doing book style first, Apple, is potentially because they can't get the quantities of display that maybe that crazy display that has no crease that we're hearing about is so constrained that they're not going to be able to do more, right?
Yeah, and it's economies of scale on some of the other parts, right, that are not dissimilar from a traditional candy bar form. So being able to leverage what they already have from a supply chain perspective. Also, in general, I think especially now, Apple has always been more of a prosumer, and so as enterprise becomes a bigger addressable market for them, and not, obviously from an iPhone perspective, they're already well established. But if you're looking at the Mac and how much the Mac now plays in enterprise, I think that thinking about more of the book style foldable gets them there. And then it's the ecosystem of applications as well, right? If there's somebody that is going to have dedicated apps for that form factor, is Apple.
100%. They might actually crack that category, right?
Right.
And that is big news because even though I love my book style folding phones on Android, I rarely multitask on them in the way that, I can, because it's even just easier to open full screen apps and just work with them. Every now and then I'll put two things side by side, but it's really rare. It still seems to be a hurdle even on the best user experience, like the the open canvas, for example, right? On
I
Oppo
agree.
and OnePlus. But back to the iPhones. So here's my quick take. I think the iPhone 17 is the best iPhone they've ever made. In my opinion, right now, if you buy an iPhone, this is the one you should buy. Nobody needs a Pro unless you're a professional photographer or videographer at this point. It's really clear to me. Also, it's porky. I haven't touched them. You have. But I looked at that Pro in videos next to the Air, and I'm like, I know that I didn't actually see a Pro next to last year's Pro, but because of the design of that milled piece of aluminum and that plateau, which
I think the plateau makes it look thicker than it is.
This word, I've been calling large camera pods or camera bumps on phones mesas before. I think they should go with mesa. It kind of looks exactly with that. With that thing, like it just looks like it could be a mesa. But anyway, the plateau thing is interesting because it feels porky to me, and it's fine. It's a Pro phone. You go nuts, like a MacBook Pro, right? Like I don't need a MacBook Pro. I use an Air, right? But the 17 is fascinating to me because like they have done camera controls there, even though that's. I don't think they talk much about it because they know it's very controversial.
People don't use
some
it,
people either love it and they've completely adopted it, like Andrew Edwards, or some people do not care, and I'm in the do not care category, mostly because I don't think they did a good job. I thought
I would love it, and I don't because I can't freaking control it.
That's what I'm saying. Have you used Oppo's implementation? It's so intuitive. It's so much easier. They didn't do any kind of physical click on it. It's just literally a touch surface, and it has taptic feedback, which is really great. So basically, you can feel like you're half pressing to focus, you get a bit of a click, and you push a little harder, and you get it's totally intuitive. And then there's only one thing you can do, and it's set in the settings. So when you slide, it's like whatever you preset it to be: exposure, zoom. And it's just so you know what you've done, and you go with that, and there's no weird like half press to select the thing. Like anyway,
that's where I get messed up.
I'm not against the camera button. But I'm glad they put it in because now we have parity. More importantly, we have parity on that amazing center stage camera, which I think is brilliant because who's done this before? Nokia back in the day did a square camera sensor for the selfie camera. It's typical Nokia. They didn't see the potential. They didn't actually make it work as well as what we've seen Apple do. But it's interesting that we now are seeing square form factor cameras again. And the way they're doing it is brilliant. And I think it's going to be a game changer. We're going to see all the Chinese phones adopt something like that in the next year or two, 100%. 120 hertz, hallelujah. Oh my God, ProMotion. I didn't think Apple would call it ProMotion on that because Pro is reserved for Pro, and Apple's very, stringent about their Pros. But I really think that overall, this is the phone to get if you're going to get an iPhone today.
Yeah, I tend to agree that the Pro line now is 100% for photographers,
and that makes
cinematographer, sense. And they've been going back and forth with that, right? At the beginning, it was interesting that they were even trying to differentiate between the Max and the regular Pro, really putting all the new camera features on the Max, and people were buying the bigger form factor despite the fact they hated it because they wanted to have the camera.
The features.
And and then a few years ago, they gave parity so that you didn't have to go larger form factor. But it might be an overkill for a lot of consumers, especially when you now have AI and computational photography that makes up for the fact that the camera system is not as sophisticated.
But you know what? That's absolute standard Apple playbook, right? Because look, and this is fine. I have no problems with this. But Apple, you will sell you an iPad, and you look at the iPad and you go, I'm going to buy this accessory or get more RAM or storage, and then all of a sudden you're like, maybe I should buy an iPad Air. And then you buy an iPad Air. And then you're like, maybe I should buy an iPad Pro. And I think that's the trick, right? I see so many students that are in the arts and literature and in fields that are not engineering and do not need the kind of horsepower provided by the better M chips using MacBook Pros every day. Now, fair enough, ProMotion is a thing, but that's about the only reason I could see buying a MacBook Pro over an Air right now if you're just if you're just the average student in college. So many have pros. And I think you know 99% of the people out there who have a pro today or buy an iPhone that are upgrading are just going to get the pro because it says pro, and their carrier deal.
100%.
Right? And the carrier deals make such a small difference in price every month that we're going to see a whole bunch of people out there with pro phones that don't even touch the surface of their phone in the same way as I have MacBook Pro and don't touch the surface of their MacBook Pro. So that's a given, and that's smart. That's Apple's playbook, and good for them, right? I don't mind it. I just think it's interesting that they're being more serious about positioning in their kind of like advertising and their sales and their marketing. These phones are like, these are the pro phones for pros. Yeah, if you're not a pro, you can use one, but we're really proing it. Like, Genlock? Are you kidding me? Genlock? Like, I had a little reel. David Immel was on the show last week, and we nerded out about phone cameras and the AI versus not. And I was saying, and I got so many. How you got all your views on I got so many views. Saying that I think the iPhone takes better video no matter what you do, and I still believe that. But people are so offended, and I'm like, Genlock. Pro RAW, like seriously, like you can't touch this stuff on Android. Like that does not exist. If you're any kind of professional and you want B-roll camera or something, iPhone.
Yeah, I think that Apple made that switch about 3 years ago where you really saw the focus shifting. No, but they didn't continue to innovate on the camera for photography, but they really doubled down on video and they position. Even if you saw the shift in marketing from, shot on iPhone for photography, now shifting to video, like they really drilling that it is the best, and the accessories too, right? It is the best phone for video. That's what they want to establish. And I do think that a lot of that is just prepping content for Vision Pro. And I know we haven't talked about it for a while, and I know, but there's a lot of that. I still think that Apple believes that XR is going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And so preparing a catalog of videos that are personal that then you can view in an XR full immersive environment where that emotional connection, think about like seeing the pictures that you took, from at the beginning of the smartphone era, and the quality of those pictures and what the emotional connection that gives you is going to be the same for video. This is not just about empowering people that shoot actual films, right? This is really about prepping content for XR, in my view.
100%. And I'm not sure that's the right approach. AR, I think, is much more of a future. I think that...
Oh, they believe that too. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
good. Because to me, like, we're about to see Project Muhan come out soon, and I'm just like yawning and shaking my head.
I want the glasses, not the headset.
Look, it's great. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. There's no doubt about it. But like, who cares? Like, anybody who like this, it's such a small percentage of people who are willing to wear this thing and do sports with it and sweat in it and stuff. Like, no. Like, just give us some glasses that do the same thing. And I'm willing to wear some, like, look at my glasses. They're pretty chunky. I'm willing to wear chunky glasses. Anyway, we could go down that rabbit hole, but here's what I think is also very important is, what you just said is exactly the difference between Google and Apple. Apple's like, we're going to make better hardware so that you can capture this 3D visual content, for the XR future. Or 3D video in the first place, right? Because once we have two displays, it doesn't matter if it's XR, AR, whatever. But Google is like, oh, hold my beer. We're just going to do this in AI. We're going to take your old pictures from you took with your, Nexus 1 that are like, 5 megapixel, whatever kind of crap, overexposed and blurry. And we're going to fix them up, not only to not be blurry and be properly color graded, but then we're going to create completely new 3D videos out of that. Because, AI. And I think that's actually quite fascinating approach because you saw them do that in their keynote for the Pixel, right?
Yeah.
Where they took an old photo and they fixed it up. And it works. I've tried it. It is pretty impressive. And not only do you have to not touch any controls and sliders and be a pro, you can just tell Gemini to do it, right? And so of course, there's a whole thing that David and I talked about last week. Like, what is a photo? What is a video? Where are we going? Is reality
absolutely
blending with virtuality to the point where we don't know what's true anymore? Like I made the example last week. It was like a person living in the middle of the country, not knowing what a container ship looks like 10 years from now, because all they've seen is AI rendered or AI enhanced photos of a container ship, and it doesn't look like that anymore. Now it's kind of like iterated into its own little universe, and then you go to the coast and you see a ship and you go, wait, that does not look like a container ship. And so we all have different versions of reality, and that's what I'm worried about right now, right? But Apple is still in the hardware world.
And it's also hard to think, because obviously, as you pointed out at the very beginning, Apple is such a great storyteller that they get fixated on certain things as far as, whether it is vertical touch on a Mac that we're still waiting for, or the fact that when you're talking about photography, they make a distinction, which I think is fair, between a great shot versus a great picture. One is the hardware that allows you to take the best picture. The other one is AI that allows you to fix something that you've taken without, maybe having an eye for what the best picture is.
Correct.
But in the process, if you think about even the erase function with Samsung, the smart erase is such a great functionality. I don't have to worry about waiting for people to get out of the freaking way so that I can take the picture of that landmark that I want, right? I take the picture and then I delete everybody. Apple is a bit more of a purist, and they argue, well, we don't want to necessarily change the picture so much that that picture is no longer representative of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is interesting, because then obviously the skeptic is like, well, do they say that because they can't do it quite well yet? Or is it, and I think there's a lot of that even with AI, we're going to have to decide, are we re-rendering things? And certain things are funny because that are not real. One of the last thing I did with my pup who passed away last week was actually taking a still picture of her and then do the Gemini video with it. And I used it for International Dog Day, where she was saying something, complaining about the fact that she didn't even get a belly rub on that day, and it was supposed to be her day. And it worked amazingly, right? But the dog don't talk. Right. So but what if that is a human that does that?
Sorry about your pup, by the way.
Thank you.
I think for me, what's interesting, since we're talking cameras, if we can nerd out for 1 second, is that we went from 14 Pro having 12, 12, and 48, only 48 on the main, to last year's 15 Pro going 48 on the ultra wide, to finally parity with Android from 3 years ago, where most phones have 3 high resolution sensors, right? So now we have 48 on all 3. And I think this is really smart of them to go from 5x to 4x, because a lot of the Chinese phones have 2 telephotos now, 4 50 or 48 megapixel sensors in the back, where it's like ultra wide 1x, 3x, 6x, so that they don't have to jump as much from the optical quality 2x on the main sensor to the 3x. And because there's that gap, right? Pixel really shows that gap, because it goes from optical quality 2x crop on the main sensor to 5x. And then if you do anything at 3.5x, you're in like uncanny valley, right? Whereas with like an Oppo phone that has the 3x and the 6x, you can do like, 2x and then 3x and then 6x, right? And so I think 5x is smart to go back to 4, and then to give us a optical quality 8x from that, without going crazy AI like the competition's doing, right? I think the crazy AI is really good. I think what Pixel did is great. I've got that on Oppo phones as well, and it works really well for certain things. And you can disable it, thankfully. That's great. And Pixel doesn't let you disable it, but they let you, select which one you want, which is also great. Yeah. But I think Apple will get there. It's inevitable. They need to compete. I just don't think they're ready. And also, they want to make it probably so that it works with text. and it works with people, right? Which right now doesn't happen on these diffusion-based AI models that are generative AI for Zoom. So I think I'm very happy with the camera hardware on these phones, other than the lag. I really would think that Apple should have put an ultra-wide in addition to the regular, just because, the Vision Pro support on all the phones. I mean, other than the 16E, which is fine. But overall, I think it's a great lineup. And we haven't talked even about the watches. I think 5G on the watches is going to make a big difference in power consumption. A lot of people don't understand that once you can master the 5G universe, which obviously Apple has done with their C1 chips, because I'm pretty sure those are in-house chips in the watches fully, right? I don't think they have separate chips for the modem because it's highly integrated. We need to research.
I think you're right. Yeah, but I need to look into it.
But anyway, 5G at the kind of data, demand level of a smartwatch is actually just going to be very short bursts of large amounts of data, and that is way more efficient than longer bursts of 4G data. Every modem engineer I've ever talked to has said to me that the reason that 5G is actually really significant for IoT is power consumption, and IoT watches are IoT devices essentially. So I'm happy with what they did in all the watches. I think the SE is really going to be the sweet spot for most people. And then of course the Ultra is Ultra, and they didn't change the price, which is good. And then of course the AirPods. I think the AirPods are going to be amazing.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it was really smart of them to think about putting the heart rate monitor sensor in the earbuds so that, two things. One is there are a lot of people that don't like to wear a watch because they don't care about notifications, but they do work out. So that's one. And if you think about the base that they have now of AirPods user being heavily skewed toward the base model, that offers a great opportunity for upgrade.
100%. And not to mention, now you have redundancy in sensors, so you can be more battery efficient. If you're wearing an Apple Watch and you're wearing the earbuds, you now have two sources of data for your heart rate sensing, and you can maybe turn off. It's actually
three. Because they take each ear individual.
Oh, there you go.
So they so you have three. Yeah, you have three ways. And apparently they pick the best signal. So you have a more accurate reading.
And that's what I'm saying. Like Samsung does the same if you're wearing a Galaxy Watch and the Galaxy Ring, where, they complement each other and overall battery life improves and stuff like that.
That's right.
So for me, the proof will be in the pudding, which is the audio quality. I'm always picky. The AirPods Pros have always been okay to me, but not the best. And so, I'm also not heavily in the iPhone ecosystem. I'm mostly a Mac user, and so when I'm on a Mac, I can use headphones, and I tend to use like Sony noise canceling or the Nothing headphones that I have now, or whatever I happen to have. But I've actually asked Apple to send me the earbuds for the first time, simply because I haven't tried AirPods Pros in like 5 years or something. I don't know what they're even like anymore.
Yeah. My biggest beef with them is actually the quality of the mic, which they redesigned. Yes. And so I'm really curious to try that.
How it works for calls and stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
But look, I think this was a great product line. Like every year I often go like, missed opportunity here, missed opportunity. It could have been better. Why are you compartmentalizing things so much, Apple? And this year I feel like they didn't do any of that. I feel like the limitations on the Air are genuine for Apple, right? Like, the choices they make, of course they're going to go eSIM. It's Apple. No ports, no buttons, I get it. It bothers me, but I get it. I'm a little more annoyed that I can't buy a Canadian iPhone and get a SIM tray anymore. But again, I don't know if you've realized this. I don't know if this has occurred to you as an analyst. Maybe it has. Supply chain. So last year's 16 Pro and Pro Max had 4 SKUs worldwide. There was a US SKU, no SIM tray, millimeter wave. There was a Canada-Japan SKU, same bands as US, but no millimeter wave and a SIM tray. And then there was a China SKU, of course, and there was, which does all the FDD and TDD stuff. And then there was a rest of world, which was Europe, Middle East, Asia, that is not China.
China.
And not Japan, right? And that was 4 SKUs. But now we have, I haven't checked this, but I think we only have 3 SKUs because hear me out. We have US, Canada, Middle East with no SIM tray and millimeter wave. We have rest of world, which has a SIM tray and no millimeter wave. And we have China, which has who knows what. Probably no eSIM, right? But my point is that for Apple is a major streamlining. Think about last year. They had to ship different phones to Canada than the US. Same geographical continent.
Yeah.
How annoying must that have been for Tim Cook in the back of his head? He must have been angry every day, right? Now he can say, oh, look at how optimal it is. We have the same in both Canada and the US. So I get it. I'm just going to have to get over it. But it's going to be annoying for testing because, like, look, here's the thing, right? Last time when I got the 16E, the C1 chip, I tested it. I got the Canadian model with the SIM tray, and I went down to the States, and I went to Seattle, and I popped the SIMs in. You know, I was like, Verizon, let's go. Let's do some speed tests. Let's try it out in different locations. AT&T, let's go. Let's try it out. You know, T-Mobile, let's go. Let's try it out. Right now, I need to beg T-Mobile to send me an eSIM. I'm not going to convert my personal T-Mobile SIM to an eSIM.
Yeah.
Not happening. I'm on a Pixel 10 Pro XL now from Canada with a SIM tray. Yay. But I would, you know, AT&T and Verizon have been very kind and supplied me with SIMs for my Pixel 10 reviews. But I need to get T-Mobile, if you're listening, I need to get some eSIMs from you because I need to be able to switch on the fly in these tests I'm going to do. But
to be honest with you,
journalist problems.
Well, yes, we need to remind ourselves we're not normal. But in fairness, though, I think if there is one company that can master how you manage multi-SIMs,
they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I hadn't used eSIM in a while on Android, and I was impressed. I was able to transfer my AT&T SIMs really easily without calling anyone, installing any apps from the Samsung phones, which AT&T had originally supplied me with eSIMs for, to my Pixels. And same with Verizon. So I think that, you know, I haven't tested T-Mobile yet, but I think, look, this is a non-issue. We know we should move on to some news items. Let's talk a little bit about what happened at IFA. There was a bunch of announcements, right?
It's like a month ago.
I know it feels like a month ago, but it was. I didn't go, so this year I didn't really get to spend as much time focusing on IFA. But it was also a smaller show. But we did get Lenovo announced the Legion Go 2, and then we got TCL Next Paper 60 Ultra phone, which has some kind of crazy display. And then we got, this is not IFA necessarily, but Samsung announced their S series tablets, right? There's a regular 11 and, you know, the Ultra. And I think of the Ultra as like a pro device. And then it has Dimensity 9400 Plus in it. And then we have a fan edition phone, which I don't know why it exists. And then we've got a bunch of quick items I will put in the show notes for you folks that are related to some Chinese launches that are upcoming and stuff. And apparently nothing is making a new pair of earbuds that's coming out on the 18th.
I saw.
So I'm actually really excited. I think it's coming to me very shortly. So stay tuned for that. I think next week we're going to be able to talk to you about them. And then also we have... there is a phone from Xiaomi, the 15T series, which is like their TikTok cycle on their flagship. They make the numbered and then the numbered T version. And the T version is like the cheaper flagships for the year. Those are coming out on the 24th. So mark your calendars for those two things, Nothing and Xiaomi. So IFA and these devices. Let's start with Samsung. What do you think of the tablets, the choice of Dimensity 9400 Plus? Interesting, that's the second year now they go to Dimensity. Do you think they're running out of like production from Qualcomm? Like, is that like basic Qualcomm saying like we can't supply that many chips, or Samsung's trying to kind of like move away and get some independence from Qualcomm here? Or what's going on?
First of all, I think it was interesting that they had the streaming event at the same time as their IFA conference, which was focused on the smart home, which was where I was focusing on. But that's a different story. That's still, you know, mobile versus electronics, which is interesting. But I don't know, to be honest with you, about the chipsets, because obviously they doubled down with Qualcomm on the phone side with their partnership for the high end SKU of their portfolio. I struggle more with Samsung on their strategy overall for tablets, in all honesty, because if you're looking at the market, and we've been saying this for years now, outside of the iPad Pro, you have in the US you have Amazon with the Fire tablets on the lower end of
Yeah.
the segment. Samsung is still trying very hard to compete with the iPad, but they're only successful marginally in enterprise because they are so good at customizing for large customers.
Mm-hmm.
But from a consumer perspective, I think it's still really hard to sell Android at those price
100%.
points.
I mean,
And so maybe the chipset kind of choice is more about optimizing margins than anything else.
Okay. I mean, I'm totally happy with the MSC 9400 Plus. I just want to be clear. You know, MediaTek is a regular sponsor and I love their products. I have no issues with that. I'm just saying, like, it's interesting to me because the reason it's more interesting this year to me, last year was like, oh, interesting. MediaTek, cool. And then this year is like, wait a minute. You put an Exynos chip in the Z Flip this year. You didn't go Qualcomm on the Z Flip. And now you're not going Qualcomm. You know, I thought it was a one-time thing. They were testing the waters MediaTek last year and they were going to go back to Qualcomm on those tablets. And no, here we are. And I'm fine with that. It's just interesting. But you're right about the whole Android tablet ecosystem, especially at high end. It doesn't make any sense, you know?
Yeah, and Qualcomm cares way more about AI PCs, which is where obviously Samsung is partnering
100%.
with them. So, you know, maybe it's also that is a question of let's differentiate where we can in a segment where even for Qualcomm, I don't think is as important anymore.
Right. And of course, we also know that MediaTek's pushing really hard on the tablet. They have the whole Companion line as well. Now they're doing Companion Ultra on the Chromebooks. I've got the Lenovo Chromebook Plus
The Lenovo
14,
one,
which
yeah.
is amazing. I'm a big Chromebook fan, so, you know, it works for me. But fan edition phone. Like, I'm not against the fan edition phone. The original S20 fan edition, I think, brought quite a lot to the table for a lower price and was worthwhile. But ever since then, it feels like the fan edition phones have just been like redundant because of all the way the trade-ins and the deals work for the regular flagship that have been out for 6-8 months, right?
I think that the FE exists so that as a customer, you don't feel you have last year's phone. That's all it is, right?
But there's the A series as well, right? So, like, where does it fit exactly?
You know, it's interesting because the A series has always been more successful in Europe than it has here. And that's because the market, the prepaid market in Europe is still a big
Huge
chunk of the market. Mm-hmm. But Samsung has never quite believed in the A series. And I think it's because it's so much easier to sell a -1 on the S series than it is convincing consumer that the A series
so you think they make
good enough.
The fan edition because it's the -1 on the flagship series, basically.
With a name that doesn't make you
downgraded, yeah.
With a name that doesn't make you feel I really wanted this year, but I couldn't afford it.
But the fan edition is a great name. I like that name, that part of the name. My point to you is, though, that you can probably buy an S25 Plus for cheaper than an S25 fan edition new with some kind of deal or trade-in. And then you still get a better phone.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird,
I'm with
right?
you. Yeah.
That's the part I don't understand. Like, I'm not saying the phone shouldn't exist, but it doesn't have its own tier because of these weird deals and carrier whatever that they have, right?
Well, I do think that outside of markets where you have a more of a prepay market, then that makes a little bit more sense. And I also think that maybe it's just a calendar slot as well, right? You know how it is with carriers that you have.
They want a new phone to advertise and it says, look, a Galaxy, woohoo. Yeah.
Yes.
See, this is why you're the analyst, because you think of this stuff. Yes, I love it. Let's talk quickly about Lenovo and the Legion Go 2. Yeah. I am not I used to work in video games. I'm not a hardcore gamer, but I've always been impressed, and not just with Lenovo, but Asus as well. Disclaimer, Asus is a sponsor, but like these handheld Windows-based devices, I think they're huge for a big segment of the gaming population. You know, there's like phone gamers, there is, Nintendo Switch gamers, you know, like these are the three categories. And then there's like the hardcore Steam, Windows, and they want the same essential device, you know, more or less, right? Like that's why Red Magic exists on the phone side and Asus makes the ROG phone, right? So like, what do you think? I mean, honestly, it's more expensive, but you get a lot more for your money. So I think it's a good upgrade.
I do think it's a good upgrade. It's interesting what you're saying about the market because Maze has been playing with the first generation and they were really excited about the upgrades on this one. And for the audience, Maze is my almost 18-year-old. And, you know, they have a console, they have PCs, but this is the thing that goes with them together with the Switch when we travel. And I think that I think the chipset is going to make a big difference in the device because it was a little bit laggy in the first generation.
Yeah, 100%. But and also battery life and thickness, all that has been improved, right?
Correct. But I think what is different as well, which is why I think Lenovo is sticking with the segment, is that for Microsoft, this is becoming a more important category as their focus on gaming is more about the services side and the gaming itself than not the hardware. And so for them, you know, anything but Xbox is becoming a much bigger focus because they care more about the revenue that is coming from Xbox subscriptions than not necessarily the hardware itself.
I mean, I think of this as the portable Xbox in many ways. And in fact, Asus has made that, right? So we have that product. So I think, you know, to me, that's kind of, it makes sense. You know, let's not make an Xbox portable, you know, secretly. As an ex-Sony employee in the games, I still want them to bring the PlayStation Portable back. Like, I really do. I know that they have the streaming thing, but like, I just want, oh man, that was so good. The Vita specifically, that was my era when I worked at Sony. But anyway, I'm very excited about these. And in fact, Theo, my producer, is really excited about the Legion Go 2 and the new Asus stuff that's coming because they're wanting to play, get this, Civilization type games, but on the go. And they don't want to do it on a phone. They want a dedicated device. And you know, of course, you can't get, you know, a Switch to do that. I don't think Civilization's available on the Switch. But anyway, so I think I'm going to try to hook them up with you know, a Windows gaming machine to only just play like, you know, world domination games. It's going to be great. And so, yeah, I'm excited about you know, Lenovo does some cool stuff. I really like their products, so I'm happy with this. Another quick question before we wrap up is, what do you think of the whole trifold thing? There's rumors that Samsung's coming out with one, but we haven't heard anything from the PR folks or anything. And you know, this is a second generation for Huawei. They just launched the Mate XT Small S, which is essentially the only upgrade I can see on paper is a newer chip, which, you know, is still in the 7 nanometer chip for them. And they went from a 12 megapixel to a 40 megapixel ultra wide. And of course, it's still super expensive and super cool and super incredible and wow. But do you think Samsung's going to do something this year still? And do you think it's going to be China and Korea only? Because I feel that's where we're going. They're going to test the waters.
I mean, it would be a very smart move if they did, right? They're going after those market where people have already made moves. I don't think that anybody outside of those markets is necessarily screaming for them. If you're looking at the overall size of a foldable market, it's still so, to the point we were making earlier, is so much dominated by the flip form factor versus the fold form factor that doing a trifold now, it would be, to be honest with you, just a technology statement, not necessarily a revenue opportunity. So going out in markets where they can show up and show their capabilities and their superiority on some side, you know, if you're looking at the screen, is a good thing. And if it doesn't work, it's not going to be as important as if they come out in the US and it doesn't work out.
Yeah, no, I feel like, you know, it's like you were talking about the tablets earlier. I feel like Samsung primarily makes the S series tablets because they need an iPad Pro competitor. Sure. Otherwise, you know, like it looks bad for them. Like I think the higher ups in Korea are like, we must have this product. And there's never any thought given to, do we need this product? We do not need this product. In my opinion, I don't think you need a pro level Android tablet. Go buy an iPad Pro. It's way better, right? Like, I hate how people are so invested in their ecosystem. Let's be more platform agnostic. I'm an Android user on a Mac. It's perfectly okay. My life is not miserable. I am happy as a clam, okay? Like, I have the best of both worlds for me. Your best of both worlds might be an iPhone and an awesome Lenovo PC, right? Laptop. Like one of those Qualcomm Snapdragon awesome laptops that I have. But like, here's the thing, right? I feel like that with this trifold, that's basically why I think it's going to happen. And that's why I think it's only going to be Korea and China. Because they're not going to take the risk in the US. And also, they want to perfect it. Remember, I think they've learned from the original Fold, right? The original Fold. Oh my God, wow.
Oh, for sure. I agree with that, but I also feel, from a market opportunity perspective in the US right now, the XR and then the glasses are going to be a bigger revenue generator for them and a bigger partnership product with Google. I do think that if everything works out if they do bring China and Korea only, and I don't even know if it's going to be China, because generally Samsung has not been particularly attentive to the Chinese market, right? They haven't done very many kind of Chinese only.
No, but if you remember, they did the
or
Z Fold 6 special edition. Remember, in between the Z Fold, and that was China or Korea first and China.
Yeah,
right?
But if that works out, I think that we will see the trifold here when
next year or 2 years
when
from
Apple
now.
comes out with the foldable. So there's like Apple has the foldable, we have 3, so we're still ahead.
That would be so Samsung, yes, indeed. Quickly, just want to mention a couple of things for the audience. So this TCL Next Paper 60 Ultra is the Next Paper technology is an LCD IPS display that has some very, very fancy etching on the glass, kind of like what Apple's doing with their Pro monitors, where they etch the glass so it's not reflective. But it goes a step beyond, because I think TCL is leading in this area, where it really does look like e-paper when they turn the display black and white, and they're able to reduce power consumption as well. And this is not new, but this particular phone has the latest of this technology, and apparently it's stunning to see in person, both in color and in e-ink mode. And because it's not e-ink, it refreshes much faster. You can watch videos in black and white if you want, but you still get that really nice non-eye strain experience for reading books and stuff. And there's a switch on the side of the phone that switches between them. But what's cool about this phone to me is that TCL is finally not doing just budget G series like Moto G type phones anymore. They're actually going for the mid-range with this. There's a periscope telephone on this phone. There's a better chipset. It seems more premium, but it's not coming to the US. So I'm hoping to get my hands on one because I want to try it out, but stay tuned for that. The other thing you should stay tuned for and make fun of, because it's kind of funny, it's very Chinese, is the Vivo X300 series is coming soon, because it'll probably come alongside the Dimensity 9500. But they're kind of comparing their camera plateau to the iPhone 17 Pro camera plateau in this kind of teaser, which is really hilarious. So check out the links in the show notes for that. And then finally, your thoughts on this. And I'm kind of happy this is happening. Sony persists at making phones. They're like, screw you all. We will sell 10 of them, but we will make our phones. And they are really making another. They made an Xperia 10 series phone, which is their kind of mid-range, 7th edition. And I had no idea this was even coming. There's no PR for Sony phones in the US anymore. They're not even sending us devices anymore. They've given up on us. But like, I'm so happy to see this. How do you feel about it?
I've been covering Sony from the time, from a Xperia perspective, from the time that they were Sony Ericsson, right? When they brought the first camera phone to market.
Same.
And I mean, they contributed so much to the smartphone market that is good to see the brand still being there. But there's part of me that says, why?
I think they are like they're like where LG and HTC used to be when they gave up, but Sony is just being Japanese and going like, nope, we're not giving up. We are a consumer electronics powerhouse. We need to have a smartphone with our name on it. And unlike HTC, we're not going to farm this out to an OEM. We're going to make it in-house. And if you look at that, did you see the design on that thing? Oh my God, it's hot. That camera bar is the sexiest camera bar I've ever seen on any phone.
They always done design very well.
But it feels like a lot of the Docomo folding phones, like from 2005, that was super like stylish and stuff. Oh, I know it's not going to be a good phone. Like, compared to, it's not going to be terrible, but it's not going to be a great phone. But it's so cool. I'm so happy about it. So there you go. That's my thoughts. Let's wrap up, Carolina. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, your various social media presences? Tell us about creative strategies and all that.
Sure. Well, you can find a lot of my writing on the tech side of things on creativestrategies.com. You can find more of sustainability and ethics and the impact of technology on society on my new Substack under my name. And on social media, I am Caro, Caro _Milanesi, Milanesi, across all of it. And go and take a look at my podcast called TEQ, as in Technology, Emotional Intelligence.
Yes, and definitely read up on the Apple announcement. I will link to the creative strategy story that Carolina wrote. And follow her on all the socials. Really great content. Really awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you.
And folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankerl, TNKGRL on all the platforms. So find me everywhere. Mostly I'm active on Blue Sky and Threads and Instagram, but I'm also on TikTok now, for better or for worse. And it's interesting, I have to say. I'm not watching it at all. Like, I'm literally go to the app and go to my tab to see my stuff and respond to comments, but I'm not getting sucked in. Okay, never happening. It's already bad enough out there. But, comment and respond to this podcast with your thoughts on social to both of us. If you are here for the first time because Carolina brought you here, please subscribe to the podcast. We're on all the major platforms. mobiletechpodcast.com will take you there if you can't find us easily or whatever. And then there's a YouTube channel, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. I post some shorts that are chunks of the podcast, some slightly longer chunks of the podcast there too, and some unboxings and hands-ons and review videos. So you know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, all that good stuff. Comment. And then Patreon, if you want to support me, patreon.com/TNKGRL, just like my handle, which is like Tank Girl without the vowels. And you can get, for $5 a month, you can get weekly an episode a day in advance. That's the trick. $5 a month, weekly episode a day in advance. And what you get is the video version. You get to see us maybe hold some devices up. And we don't have our iPhones to show you yet. So unfortunately, not this week, but maybe next week. And then, you get a bit more content if I go over time and stuff like that. So consider helping me out if you can. Patreon.com/TNKGRL. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Infineon. Infineon Technologies is a global semiconductor leader in power system and IoT. Their team supports digitalization and decarbonization for various systems, including automotive, AI, power, and IoT. And Carolina, thanks so much for being on the show yet again. Good times.
Oh, thank you for having me. I always enjoy it.
Absolutely. We'll definitely have you on again in the future. And folks, we will have a show next week with iPhones. So stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.